We'll wait for a few minutes for the rest of the people to join, and then we'll get started. So, and Srinath, I see few people in the waiting room. Can you let them in? Yeah.
Hi, Manish. Good to see you.
Yogesh, I think we can get started.
Yeah. All right. So, welcome everyone. It's a Saturday evening in India, and we're very excited to host Anand with us today in this event. I'll start off with a brief introduction about Anand, which you might already know, but I'll still do it. So Anand is the co-founder and CEO of Bugworks. Bugworks is a global biotech startup which is working on tackling the massive problem posed by the untreatable bacterial superbugs. The company is designing next generation antibiotics that can tackle the broad spectrum of microbes. To give you a perspective of how important their work is, and for this I'll quote one of the recent Lancet studies which showed that antimicrobial resistance is a global public health threat, and it directly caused deaths of around 1.3 million people, and it contributed to deaths of 5 more million people in 2019 alone, which is more than HIV/AIDS or malaria. A separate study also showed that the total number of out of total number of death, India contributed around 35% of the total number. That is huge, and over the time in future, this is only going to increase. Before Bugworks, Anand was co-founder and managing director at Cellworks. It's a company which is pioneering personalized cancer therapy using mathematical modeling frameworks to simulate different cancer pathways. He's also co-founder of a couple of biotech incubators and also supports a number of startups. He's an active mentor and angel investor in the Indian biotech ecosystem. Prior to the biotechnology experience, Anand was a professional in the semiconductor industry, working as co-founding managing director of India and China operations for a couple of startups in the chip design space. He is an avid philanthropist, and like out of a number of different engagement he has, I'll only talk about two. He's one of the founding trustee of Child, which is NGO in India which takes care of young boys and girls who are HIV positive and are abandoned by the society. And second, he's also a co-founder of Humanist. It is a foundation which supports cancer treatment for people below the poverty line. Finally, talking about his education background, Anand received his bachelor's in electronics and communication from Anna University in 1986, followed by master's and PhD in electrical and biomedical engineering from George Washington University in the US in 1992. So with this introduction, Anand, I welcome you today evening with the community members of iBlot, and it's amazing to host you.
Thank you so much, iBlot, Yogesh, and your team. A real pleasure to be here and to see youngsters, at your age group trying to do something for the country's biotech ecosystem. Can't be taken for granted, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks. So in this session, Anand, we'll spend around first 30-40 minutes where I'll ask you a few questions. And in the meantime, I'll encourage all the audience members to post your questions also in the chat box, which we'll take up in the last 20 minutes of the session.
Sure.
So with this, I'll just start with the first question, right? So Anand, you had like a huge, long professional journey, right? So how would you summarize it? And what do you think were the key moments when you thought you made the most impact in the society around you?
Great. So I'm very humbled that for a very average student, I had a very good career. So if I can do it, others can do it much better. So Yogesh, for me, basically so experience goes into multiple things, right? The undergrad that happened at Anna University was great. I got exposed to some outstanding colleagues who got me thinking certain lines. Then came the education in the US that opened my eyes and vistas to how to do research. The PhD allowed me to mix engineering and biology, right? In some ways, in biomedical engineering, chip design. And then my career in the US was completely as a semiconductor physicist designing computer chips. And very early on, I realized, Yogesh, that I wouldn't make a great engineer. But somehow I had the the joy and the passion of working with teams, and very quickly could get into program management of complex chip design teams and started working with Japan, China, Europe, etc. So the globalization aspect and the ability to work with teams everywhere is probably the key defining moment. See, one has to be honest about their skills. And I realized very quickly that my technical skills were average, but the ability, like I said, to work with orthogonal thinking and get out of one's comfort zone and work with these kinds of orthogonal thinking sets with people who are much smarter than me, and acknowledge that they're smarter than me, was the first major move. Second major move, Yogesh, was coming to India. India was happening. I moved back into 2000, small kids. My wife and I decided to come from the Bay Area here. I got the opportunity to run India operation for a US company, chip design company called Spin Circuit. So the ability to jump straight from US back to India, where I had never worked, and to be able to run a US operation in India was outstanding. The next was forming the India Semiconductor Association, because we didn't have a semiconductor talent or association in India. And I'm one of four co-founders of the India Semiconductor Association, which today has about 275 companies. And that was a fantastic moment to bring semiconductor industries together. And today, the story is great. From chip design to manufacturing to boards, India is a powerhouse. I hope we will become a powerhouse in manufacturing. The next thing is China. I think, Yogesh, the ability to work in India and also work in China taught me a lot. Chinese are highly disciplined, but they don't think out of the box. Indians are totally chaotic and opinionated, but we are able to think out of the box. So what if you could blend your style of operation and working with people that you can actually mix and match the best talent from all over the world? That was a huge learning. And the final learning is moving to biotech, the most humbling for multiple reasons. Biotech is most humbling because you're dealing with human health or human food or environment, and nothing can be bigger than that in my life or your life. So the ability to play a small role on something so big that way after my time can have such massive impacts on society is the largest learning of my career. Second learning is you have to forget all your shame and develop the most thick skin possible to run a biotech company, because you'll go with the begging bowl across the world for funding, and whatever pride you think you had in your accomplishments will be nicely humbled. So if you want to be humbled, start a biotech startup company. So that's also a fantastic learning. And the final learning that I want to share with your audience is I woke up one day in 2013, seeing the newspaper, Yogesh, that superbugs were going to take over humanity. No new antibiotics. Manish, who's in the line, knows this better than me. By the way, Manish's team, when he was working at Orchid, worked on a fantastic antibiotic that just is coming into our stream a few days ago. So congratulations, Manish, for that. So the AMR, as you correctly said at the top of it, is a huge catastrophe. And when I woke up one morning and said, I'm going to start a startup company in antibiotics, everybody thought that I must have smoked a very strong weed the previous night. I don't smoke weed. I wish I had, but I don't. But basically realized that nobody's going to solve our problem. And then I looked at myself, although I was already, 49, 50, and said, you know what? One last shot. I'm going to do a startup company that's going to change the world. And if I fail, that's okay. We would have at least created the basic bricks that somebody may then put together and create a wonderful wall. Not everybody needs to create the wall, but at least create a brick that can go into the meaningful wall of humanity That's my
Right.
logic.
So how did this transition actually work out, Anand? It would not have been so simple, waking up in the morning and coming up with an idea, working towards. I mean, almost 15 plus years you were not in the domain of biotech, right?
Correct.
So how did you prepare yourself to take this challenge? I know you had amazing network and a lot of things which you had already done, but still, how was your journey of preparing for Cellworks? How did it actually start?
Beautiful. Great question. And multi-layer answer to that. I still don't know biology. I'm still trying to learn. So that keeps me, very young at heart and mind, because I'm constantly asking the most basic questions to my co-founders. That's a great way to keep learning throughout life and keep those gray cells going. But Yogesh, to be very honest with you, I come from a family where everyone is a doctor. So the family has been doing a lot of work in medicine. My father attended on the first HIV patient in 1985 or 86 in India, patient one from Madurai. So the family always had something to do with medicine, right? And I went into engineering. So I think subconsciously, I always wanted to do something in healthcare, but doing fantastically in the semiconductor industry, which is a far more lucrative space than biotech, I didn't think about it. I had my own personal challenges, Yogesh. Sometimes the best inflection that we create for ourselves come through some tragic moments of your life where you think it's all over, right? So I had very serious health problems that almost knocked me. First, it knocked me when I was 35, and then again, it knocked me when I was 40. And then I started telling myself there must be a reason why I survived, right? And always turn what looks like a difficult situation or why the hell it happened to me to, wow, it happened to me. So I decided to choose not to ask why it happened to me, but wow, it happened to me. And I said, wow, man, we are doing something semiconductor. Let's do something in healthcare. And I fought cancer and started Cellworks, which is a cancer therapeutic company, right? So it's incredible. Sometimes your personal journeys and your subconscious all come together. And that's what caused me to get into this space. But I also realized that India was happening where the science talent plus IT talent could come together in new ways. So we were part of that early wave in 2006 when we started Cellworks, completely clueless. We didn't start it because we had all the answers. We started it out of naivety, thinking, can I bring a bunch of biologists, semiconductor engineers, and computer guys together and do something in biology akin to what we did in semiconductors, right? How beautiful, how naive. But again, some of the best innovations come when you go fearful and you go in with ignorance. If I was only a scientist doing my PhD, postdoc, double postdoc, triple postdoc, I swear on your audience, I would not have done what I did. Because you get so stymied, you get so insular in your thinking. Of course, you think you're a great scientist, but then you get so stuck in your thing. Whereas when you have a broader vista and you say, I can bring people together, I took a huge chance, right? I mean, really, really huge chance. These are the things that make you change. And the want to study. To say, okay, I can study biology in my 40s. Picked up microbiology in my 50s when I was 51, 52. Still know very little. And it keeps you humble because you know so little compared to your colleagues. So opportunity to learn, opportunity to bring good people together, opportunity to tap into India's strength. So just to finish up, when I came here in 2000, India was just starting with semiconductor, became part of the semiconductor wave. 2005, 2006, biotech, biocon, all happening. We said, that's a wave. So if you're able to keep your antennas open, if you want to do great things, then you create the wave. You don't wait for a wave to come and become the rising tide syndrome. You create the wave. I chose to be part of creating the wave.
Perfect. Yeah, it was pretty ambitious and, as you said, naive to just put these heads together and expect something good will cook. And I think, yeah. So what were some of the early failures, like in an entrepreneur's journey, like back in 2006 in a new domain with such ambition? What were some of the early failures which you had and how did you actually deal with those?
Excellent. So 2006, we started Cellworks. Then 2013, 14 is Bugworks. And then I've done 3 or 4 other small companies in which I'm an investor. The biggest challenge we had in 2006 is getting engineers and scientists into the same room. It was completely different species that had to come together. They're not even from the same language, right? Both are highly opinionated, both, have great intelligence and great approach, but the ability to bring an electrical engineer to look at a spice type of language in circuit diagram, to sit down with somebody who was drawing a Krebs cycle on a whiteboard, and see that actually circuit design with control theory of poles and zeros is not that much different from homeostasis. That was incredible to bring that together. Today we talk about omics because all of you know transcriptomics, metabolomics, proteomics, genomics, and now you're using AI and machine learning to bring it all together. But when you are the first ones who are reading genomics coming out or proteomics coming out and say, how do I make sense out of it? Huge challenges. Second challenge was not a single investor even we couldn't understand what we're doing. So how do you convince an investor to understand what we're doing? So the complexity to go with the begging bowl to make investors. Bugworks was also difficult, but Cellworks was much harder, difficult. Second. Third thing, there is no ecosystem. Today, I just read a report for your audience. They'll be happy to know there are 75 biotech incubators in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, 900 incubatees, 600 companies funded by BIRAC in DBT, 4,000 crores in follow-on funding just for these companies. This is the statistics I took down and I wrote in a piece of paper to read for you. None of that existed. So you had to go take a place, understand what is genomics, go figure out if somebody does a whole genome sequencing, then figure out somebody can give me a computing infrastructure to do all the computing because cloud computing was still not ubiquitous. Many challenges. Finding the talent pool. We could not find the talent pool. What did we do, Yogesh? We hired 100 new college grads, 100, and started training them. Sorry, blind leading the blind, but that's okay. Slowly, some candlelight in the dark room started coming, right? And even now, it's not a fully lit room, but it's not dark. So it is very exciting. And all of these challenges are the reason why we became who we became.
Interesting.
Because even today, Manish knows this well. Although we are running an AMR company, I can't pick up the phone and call Kiran Mazumdar or Glenmark Pharma or Orchid Pharma, anyone for answers. There ain't any answers when you're doing novel drug discovery from India. That is it. So when you are in a situation when there is no precedence and you have to figure out, you know you're going to make lots of mistakes. So lots of things, lot of product failures, lot of customer failures, a lot of investors who must have been really upset with us that the gestation has been so long. There are many more failures than there are successes in our journey.
Right.
And the learnings from those failures are tenfold. It's one log higher than any learnings from successes that you can get. So it's wonderful. And the ability to say that it's okay to fail. And other people are still going to think that what we are doing is good, despite our failures and shortcomings, is the new India that we wanted to create. Because everybody wants to talk about IPO, this, that, market cap fail. Who are the people who go in and lay those pathways, right? It's fine. And so we are very content to say that we could be clueless pioneers, but pioneers.
Got it. I'll touch up on the ecosystem part later in the conversation. But before that, I would like to understand your history with Bugworks a bit better. So Bugworks won multiple national, international innovation awards, right? In 2015, Best Biotech Startups in India, Economic Times Top Innovator, Carbex Grant, right? So what was different about Bugworks, or what was like when you transitioned as a spin-off from Cellworks, right? What fueled that innovation? Because 2015 was early, even for biotech startups which were coming up. It was not as good as the numbers which you told about incubators and others, right? Those are today, but that was also early. So you would have a separate set of problems to solve at that point. So, and early stages of any startup is like probably the most important, the kind of people you select, the kind of resources, problem statements, and so on, right? So can you talk a bit about early transitionary stage when the spin-off just landed, and first 2-3 years, what was happening?
Great. For your audience, I want to state something with all humility. Bugworks is still not a success, right? I have to state that with humility because it's a fact. Just because there are only a handful of people doing novel drug discovery work in India, we stand out. And so I have to be honest about it. But have we blazed new trails? Have we raised funding that nobody has done? Have we cracked broad spectrum antibiotics? Yes to all of that. But still, we have another 4-5 years before we can convert our work into a real drug and start saving patients and giving some money back to our stakeholders. Then I will consider ourselves a success. So please allow me to prepend my comments with that statement, right? And it's so very important to keep that in mind as a biotech innovator, right? Early successes are easy, and then it gets exponentially difficult as you move towards clinical trials. And it's better to know that. Now, we did Bugworks, Yogesh, because the numbers for AMR were climbing. Too many people were dying. No pharmaceutical company wanted to work in it because the money in antibiotics is the lowest and poorest compared to cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, blood pressure, etc.
Right.
Antibiotics work in 5 days. They save you, you move on. The top antibiotics, like the ones we are working on, or the ones that Manish worked on when he was in Orchid, will be kept in lock and key to be used for the worst patient who's dying in the ICU. So phenomenal for the life of patients, but there's no money. Okay. And then we said, let's do a broad spectrum antibiotic company. While we were in Cellworks, we got funded by the Wellcome Trust to do a TB project.
Okay.
And we thought we could simulate tuberculosis using a lot of intelligence and come out with new drugs for drug-resistant tuberculosis. By the way, drug resistance, for your audience, simply means bugs are much smarter than humans. Bugs have figured out ways to destroy the antibiotic or be invisible to the antibiotic or change the target itself so the antibiotic doesn't even go into the target. That's drug resistance. They have evolutionary intelligence of millions of years. So whatever new thing you throw at them, bacteria and fungi and viruses will figure out ways. So very tough space scientifically. That's why there are only less than 10 classes of anti-infectives in humanity, starting from Alexander Fleming's penicillin in 1925, I think, or 26. So the big thing that happened, Yogesh, look at that. There's something called alchemy that I want to talk to your audience about. When you dream big and you want to do something for society that's so big and that can change it, and the reasons of doing it are not driven by money or to show that Anand Kumar is great, sometimes things align together, and that's called alchemy. It's a very powerful concept, and alchemy can come to all of our rescue in our personal lives as well as in a professional life. If the attitude of why you want to do something is very clear and it's driven by altruism and driven by larger level purposes. AstraZeneca was the only large pharmaceutical company that had an R&D in India. All other large pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, Merck, etc., simply have back office operations here, some IT, some control, some quality controls. AstraZeneca had a real R&D. They closed AstraZeneca, right? I was just trying to spin out Bugworks. My board was not allowing me to go, saying stay on for whatever reason, like me. AstraZeneca's closing. I had got word, so I said, let's do it. So the reason Bugworks has done great work is not because of the guy who's talking to you right now, but it's because of the amazing talent that joined me from AstraZeneca. My co-founders, my lead chemistry, my biology, etc. So all credit to people like Dr. Balaganesh, who had built a fantastic AstraZeneca R&D unit. I'm simply riding on the shoulders of those great people, of the work they had done. Simply riding, all right? And if I don't state these facts, youngsters who listen to these podcasts don't realize that it's so important to appreciate the work done by -1, -2, -3. We are all simply working off the work done by. None of us just woke up one morning and invented something. Therefore, Bugworks happened because we knew the need is happening. All the big pharma are going on. Either we could say we are also going to run away or say, let's wake up. One last startup I want to do and do it with a bang. Right? Can India invent the first novel broad spectrum antibiotic, meaning it can take out all of the bacteria that cause classical hospital and community infections, pneumonia, bloodstream infection, urinary tract infection, intra-abdominal infection, skin infection, etc., etc. We are head to toe. We cover everything. The last time a novel broad spectrum happened was in 1960s with a class called fluoroquinolones. Since then, we've had some good antibiotics, but nothing as dramatic as that. Today, Bugworks has that opportunity. Isn't that lovely? We're not yet a success. We have to get through clinical trials. So we have a long way to go and many valleys of death and no oxygen. So I have to get through valleys of death with low oxygen. But from India, can you dream that big? Can you do novel drug discovery when nobody wants to touch a space? Crack it. This is what made Bugworks happen. And the last point is the mission and the person's telling the story has to be so convincing because no investors are going to back you on spreadsheets. What spreadsheet can I show? I'm burning. If my phase 2 trial is successful, some pharmaceutical company may take my asset, or I may have to raise more money to move it forward because this is antibiotics. That means the people who trust you, your stakeholders, are as important as your scientists. And it took 4 to 5 years for my own scientists to realize that investors know more than us, because it's easy to say, what do they know? What kind of stupid questions are they asking? They all came from MBA school. BS. If those people, if I was putting my own money, I have right to say that. But when you're depending on other people's money to take your crazy vision and mission forward, those stakeholders are the most important stakeholders. They're your partners, and you need to do everything to placate them, even more than I do for my employees. So these are some of the interesting stories that make Bugworks happen. And we are just so close to doing that breakthrough. To tell your audience, in preclinical studies, that means in laboratory, in test tube, in mice, in guinea pig dogs, we have been tested on 13,000 superbugs, 13, around the world. Largest set of collection. Manish, you may not even have heard of this, 13,000, we're just going to publish it, right? We take out everything. So preclinically, it's great. Typically, if you work in preclinical, the translation to man is very good in anti-infectives, but safety is the scariest part because it's a 1 gram, 1.5 grams, right? So we are not yet a success. The day our phase 1 trial completes next year, and it says it's safe enough for human to be used, that's the day we will open a champagne. Because then we know we are at the precipice of something massive. And just for your audience, to finish my answer, the data you gave on Lancet paper has already been proven to be wrong. Lancet came out with a new paper on 21st of November, 5 days ago, that showed that the number of deaths per year is 2 million, not 1.27 million, out of which 700,000, roughly 30%, is from India. If my brethren and sistren are dying at 7 lakh year on year, that's more than COVID, more than official COVID. There's something wrong here. Hugely wrong. Doesn't have the big pandemic picture like COVID, but it's happening as 50 deaths here, 100 deaths here, 200 deaths here in a 1.4 billion audience. 7 lakh. And while I'm speaking, you could do a Google search on the Lancet November 21st. So this big, and if we are the company or the group that can solve it, what other big payout is imaginable?
Absolutely. Yeah. So can you very briefly talk about co-founder and investor relationship very briefly? Like,
very good.
What are some
very
of
smart questions.
your...
Right. I consider all my investors as co-founders. Just because 3 people came together in an ROC and formed Bugworks, they can't be the only co-founders. All of my angel investors, the people who put that initial 1 million, are considered my co-founders. You treat them as your partners and co-founders because they're in for a 10-year ride. They're not in for a 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. They're in for a 10-year ride, which means they said this group may not succeed, but they seem to have fire in the belly and passion to solve something so big. So I will write my $200,000 check for them. If I lose it, I lose it. But if I click, my $200,000 would have gone into a small drop in the bucket of saving humanity, which means my messaging and PowerPoints and everything about is to get that audience and get that investor excited about the message, not so much about the market. And then as you move out of series seed investment to series A and series B, then all the bullshit spreadsheets come in, right? Which all the spreadsheets are who the hell knows what. Because remember, when you're trying to do intellectual property, there is no revenue for the first 8, 9, 10 years. You're building IP and you're creating value models based on intellectual property. that in 10 years from today is going to make money. And then I tell you, Yogesh, trust me, in 10 years from today, I'm going to be $1 billion company. So today my valuation is 50 million because of discounted cash flow. And if they're believing it and coming on table, they are my co-founders just as much as my scientists and head of chemistry and bio. I treat them with great respect. I treat them with great love. I want the entrepreneurs to know that respect and love are the most important ingredients to take a biotech. You have to, first of all, respect your co-founders, respect your employees, and have the love and reverence for the investors who believed in you. If she or he is putting 100,000 or 200,000 dollars to start your company, they're believing in you, right? So I think you treat them with great respect and have transparency. And from day one, whether it is Cellworks, Bugworks, Biomonitor, any of the companies I'm involved with, Yogesh, even though it's a struggling company, we run it like a publicly listed company. Your ROC registers, your financials, everything you have to be absolutely fastidious with your partners so that the books are clean, so that your investors, the only thing they can look at a quarterly basis is your book. So treat that with sacrifice. That is my temple. For a guy who doesn't believe in God, only temple is whatever we do, that transparency has to be perfect. And your partners, all the stakeholders are apprised of what is going on in the company. And they come to your rescue, as they did for us.
Nice. I'll actually move to the startup ecosystem. I think I have last 8 minutes for the questions I have prepared. We talked about some of the brighter side of the statistics which you showed me, right? Which you had told earlier about. What are some of the existing gaps which still exist?
Yes.
As of now, like by 2025, we expect that India will contribute 20% to the global biotech industry, right? And out of 5,000 listed companies, around 4,200 of them are startups. And that shift has happened more recently. Yes. But for these startups to build that kind of IP you are talking about and bring out that kind of impact in years down the line, what are some of the gaps which leaders of today need to fix today or in coming future so that these startups have that leveling playground to actually go ahead and, make noise and make that impact?
So this is a brilliant question, probably the most important of all. Questions are good, but this is really the most important question. And I want this audience to listen to this very carefully, right? So when people like Manish and I started companies, really there was no ecosystem, right? Today, as I said, there are 75 plus incubators. Any city you are in doing work, unless it's totally remote, Yogesh, you have incubators. So what are the good things that have happened? Government of India, through Department of Biotechnology, has done a fantastic job, phenomenal job, doing 1.0, which means that's a first level of startups, seeding startups, giving 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 1.5 lakhs. The processes can be tedious, money release can be painful, etc., but they are the ones who have seeded these large number of startups. 2, Government of India, particularly Government of Karnataka and others where I'm sitting, have seeded incubators. Without incubators, I couldn't have done Cellworks. Without incubators, we definitely couldn't have done Bugworks. 3, within these incubators, mentors started showing up who came out of Biocon, Syngene, AstraZeneca, etc. It's called coalition mentoring. You meet people and you say, how do I do something? Some discussions, etc. is having. Mentors started showing up, which we didn't have a few years. 4, companies like myself and others have at least raised 2 or 3 rounds of funding. We have a long way to go, but unheard of to do a Series A, Series B, Series C. That means there is some precedent starting to happen in terms of fundraising. Long way to go. So that is 1.0. Your question is on what are the gaps to make 2.0 happen? The gaps are as follows. Number 1, our regulatory environment in our country still comes from a generics manufacturing frame of mind. In order for regulation to move to the next level and be able to allow innovation to happen from India to fix our own problems and not wait for a global company to do it, regulatory body has to hire more people, bring in people with experience from abroad, from FDA, EMA, etc., who know how to do novel drug discovery. 2, these incubators that I spoke to you about now also have to become bigger in size. Physical size, allow larger teams to grow in there, have scale-up plans, because unlike software and electronics, here you need heavy-duty capex, while of course, even in electronics, you need heavy capex when you go to manufacturing of a chip. But leave that aside. I'm talking about in design. I need pilot plants to make white powder, fermentation plants. I need capex. I need investment to scale up the incubator. So that is lacking, slowly happening. Number three, government has to stay invested and fund deeper into biotech. So instead of funding 1,000 companies at a 50 lakhs each, they probably will fund 100 companies, 1/10,
Right.
much more deeper. You can't fund, we have 1.4 billion people, we have thing, right? We spend 1.5%, 1.3% of our GDP on health. We spend less than 1% on R&D. These are the realities. Our podcast can't change that reality. I mean, really hopeless. So within that small dollar or small rupee that we have to do our best. We can't create money. So gaps are regulatory. Government has to fund at a 2.0 level, not a 1.0 level, which means start taking companies that are doing well at the 1 level and fund deep, as did Korea, as did Israel, as did United States, as did UK. Governments have to stay invested in biotech. They cannot remove their hand out of it, because no country, including US, NIH budget is billions and tens of billions of dollars. Today can't do it. Next, funding. We still don't have a vibrant funding ecosystem. All the funding dollars go to the Paytms of the world or the Byju's of the world, or all those things where people thought these are so great and everybody could see what happens. Now, there is a realization that we need to fund impact. Why is that coming? India also has a lot of rich people over the last 10 years. These rich people are running family offices. In their family offices, although they want to make money, a small portion of the money wants to go into things that can change the world or change India. So I see some changes, family offices. VCs are starting to look at India to say, can we fund companies, not just like Bugworks, but companies like ours. So the funding is the big gap. And the last but not the least, to do good work, particularly in novel pharmaceuticals, etc., you need talent pool. Remember, our talent pool, just because you have smart scientists doesn't mean you have drug discovery talent. Yes, we have a lot of smart scientists. I can go to the IITs, the IIScs, the NITs, Amrita University, great people, they're smart. But unfortunately, whether you're working in genetic sciences, gene therapies, cell-based therapies, drug discovery, you need experienced talent. That experienced talent is very, very, very little in India. I could not have done Bugworks if AstraZeneca was not there. I will not do another company in a new space unless talent pool is available. And just because India, you can throw statistics at me that we are producing 173,000 scientists and we are producing 1,260 PhDs. I don't give a damn. Have they taken a drug to market? Have they worked on CAR-T and taken something, right? They may know the services elements of doing things. Sir, tell me, what should I synthesize? Sir, tell me which animal experiment you want me to run. Sir, tell me which safety study you want me to do. Damn good. And our people are fantastic. But if I want to put together a team of 10, 20 people that have burned their backs in taking products and failing, and then getting some success, not available in India. So for my next company, I will go sit in the US and hire the first 4 or 5 people to come out of big pharma back to our country, just like we did for semiconductors to do it, right? We don't have an aerospace ecosystem. Today in India, we're kicking ass in aerospace because of National Aeronautic Laboratories, because of DRDO, and they've done everything, product life cycle management. That in biotech and pharma is limited. And my last point is, but still within that limitation, India is doing a great job. Just like we did generics for pharmaceuticals, today we are doing biosimilars for biologics. We are doing synthetic biology. Wherever we have strength, fermentation, manufacturing, etc., we are doing a phenomenal job, right? But if you want to do completely novel drug discovery, like what I hope India does, because you need some novel drug discovery to solve my diabetes problems, my infection problems, my cancer problems, it needs senior talent, which is very, very limited in India. For your audience to know, we are not only working on antibacterials, we also have an immuno-oncology program. We realize that oncology destroys families medically, emotionally, financially. And we should not have to wait 20 years until a white man's drug becomes patent-free before it enters here. Or we should not be cribbing about the cost of medicines because it's coming from outside. We need to invent ourselves. So we're working on some novel oncology drugs for breast cancer, lung cancer, gastric, prostate, two other cancers. Very tough space. We don't have big results to share yet, but we want to be change makers. We really do want to make it. We have to fix our own problems. And I can't complain about the government spending or lack thereof. So you do what you can and create that wave that we spoke about.
Right. So I would encourage audience to please post your questions in the chat box. In the meantime, I'll go ahead with two more questions.
Please.
First is getting talent back to India. Now, that doesn't sound like a very simple thing to do. From your experience over the years, what do you think we should be doing in the country so that we are able to incentivize or tell them that, hey, come back, it's worth it? Like, how do we bring that confidence?
Beautiful. I think, again, you're asking very pointed questions with no easy answers. And I'm no magician with easy answers. Whatever little I know, I'll share with you. One is we need more success stories from India. We don't have enough success stories. We have a lot of interesting stories, but there's only one Biocon, one Syngene. You know, if I have to name companies that have become public, successful, taking something all the way, I'll myself struggle. If I struggle, then you can imagine, right? Which means we hope in the next 3 to 5 years, there'll be some successes in industrial biotechnology, in gene therapy, in biosimilars, etc., to where the world will take notice that Indians are not just good in doing services and spraying and praying, but some of that spraying and praying has also become successful companies that became M&A, that went IPO, that got acquired, etc., etc. We are part of that wave that we hope we can. I don't know whether Bugworks will succeed. I have no illusion it will. Okay, but we are part of that wave of companies that we hope will have some exits. When that happens, and when our publications are the topmost publications happening in the top journals of science, Nature, Cell, etc., senior talent is from outside is looking at India. We know that for a fact. They're looking at a new India with great pride. And you may like the leadership in Delhi, you may not like the leadership in Delhi. That's outside the scope of today's meeting. But we have done phenomenally well in the last few years in creating a good recognition globally. And the vaccine story is a crowning glory in that narrative. So people are looking, particularly those who are in the early 40s, that late 30s, early 40s period, good talent, because if they passed 50 plus inertia, if they're too young, they're just doing the PhD PDF. So it's that 35 to 42, 43. We are in talks with people. We just hired 2 people, one from Israel, one from US, that we are moving here.
Nice.
Right? Yeah, not easzy. It's going to be 1Z, 2Cs, not at all easy. And the other thing is, in semiconductor industry, which I worked for so many years, or IT, when we move people from abroad, we pay them amazing salaries. I was told by all my biotech peers, don't pay that kind of salaries. In biotech is not semiconductors, IT. BS. I don't believe it. We made Bugworks the topmost paymaster. I don't care. If you want to do good work, we need to treat our scientists with dignity and respect. We don't. And Manish is sitting on the line, and he may agree with me, may not agree with me. The biotech industry simply, we think a scientist is absolutely cheaper than the cheapest labor you can get outside. I refuse to take that line. I want to hire the best, and I want to treat them with the same dignity that IT industry, aerospace, semiconductor does. So when we're talking to the girl or guy from abroad, you're not starting with how much can I afford you? If you want someone, I'm going to make it happen. Right? So we pay well, you treat them with dignity. Run your company in India like a global company, not like a mom and pop Bania company. Right? And realize that if you own your full company, 100% of zero is zero. 10% of 100 million is 10 million. Big differences in thinking. So get out of the Bania mentality. Go all over the world. Have networks outside. Pay well. You can be able to convince your investors that you need to pay well to bring people. Give them the free hand. What do they like about the US that they don't like about India? Am I going to come and work for an Indian boss? Will she or he breathe down my neck? Will they treat me like an IISc professor? These shackles, scientific shackles, have to be removed. And we will remove them.
Perfect. We'll start taking questions from the audience now. The first one is from Veena. She's asking, I think this is more about finding the right technical guidance for a early stage startup, right? So, especially in the biotech domain, fairly complicated, right? So, how can early co-founders, find the connections and pioneers who can actually technically mentor them?
Yes, we have very established. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have given you a beat around the bush answer. Now it's very simple. Get yourself connected to one of those 75 plus accelerators I spoke about. If you're in Bangalore, which is 70% of the startups, I'm part of CCamp, or there is Bangalore Bio Innovation
BBC.
Cluster, BBC called Helix, IKP, Eden, in Axel. There are at least 3 or 4 here, right? Venture Center Pune does a fantastic job. IKP in Hyderabad does a good. Get yourself associated with an accelerator. The biggest value they bring for you is they tell you how to write a grant so you can work with the government. They put some mentors and they connect you to a larger network of mentors. Become part of ABLE, which is India's Biotech Association. Go out and network. Scientists are too comfortable, reading science papers. BS, get out of that mindset and start looking at where all you can write grants, where all you can network with people. Today, that's the way you go about building that, because you are so correct. That's a great question asked by your colleague there, is that, biotech is going to require heavy duty mentorship, right? If I didn't have the experience I did with my semiconductor industry and global exposure, I could not have done Cellworks. It's not that I was born so intelligent that I knew how to do companies. I don't. I had great people working with me, as I said, who are much smarter than me, and a global exposure. And don't think only India when you do a biotech company. Always think global, global, global from day one, because India is a severely deficient market. It's a great place to do science and proof of concept, but if you're depending only on India for a market, kaput. So think global.
Right. The next one, Swaradi, we picked this up earlier in the conversation, but Anand, if you would like to add anything to that, like what sparked you from transitioning from electronics to biomedical?
I think the spark was a few things, right? One, I was using modeling and simulation to simulate computer chips. So I was looking for other areas where we could use it. Right? That comes because I was thirsting for new areas, right? I had learned what I could in semiconductors, right? So the want to learn new areas, want to do something in healthcare because of my family background, because of my own health issues. I think, and then meeting the right people and networking with friends from Silicon Valley who had moved to Bangalore. Bangalore is a great area to do crazy things, right? When you're stuck in the traffic, you have a lot of time to think of all these good things. So it is this ability to think out of the box and do crazy things. I mean, I just didn't want to go on the beaten path, Yogesh. Right? As I said, I don't know whether it'll lead to success, but a lot of excitement for sure.
Right. Yeah. So next one is from Varun. How important is the genomic epidemiology and concerted efforts to collect genomic data about different infectious agents to fight AMR?
Brilliant.
We did that in COVID, I think, a lot. But yeah, in context of AMR, how important is that? And are we doing something of that sort?
No, we do very, very, very sketchy job in epidemiology. So genomics, just for your audience, please, the person who asked the question, please allow me to answer your question in 2 parts. First part is genomics is phenomenal and it's a bread and butter for cancer. Gone are the days where it's like, I have a chemotherapy or I have a molecular targeted therapy, everybody can use it. Yeah. Take my word for it. 10 years from today, I hope you don't have to come across people who have cancer, but if they have cancer and they walk into a doctor's office, there'll be an AI machine, not even 10 years, 5 years from today, there'll be an AI machine learning that takes the biopsy and maps the biopsy with which drug will work or won't work, which combination will work. It is completely going to be companion diagnostics, personalized medicine driven. Many diseases will go that way, but cancer is a leading one because the pathways are also heavily genetic markers. Infection, we don't do it because in infection, we only look at whether the bacteria or fungus is there or not there. The marker that we look at is life or death. Are the colony of organisms growing or not growing? Now, 5-10 years from today, if you found out that somebody with a particular genetic marker is going to do better with this antibiotic? Maybe, but it's such a hard area even to survive on classical antibiotics, let alone bring genomics into AMR. So it's going to be really, really hard. Where I think genomics will come into AMR, not today, but in 10, 15 years from today's, people are looking at putting viruses into our body called phage, P-H-A-G-E.
Yeah.
Instead of putting an antibiotic that is susceptible to resistance, you tune external viruses, because viruses and bacteria are natural enemies ever since the dawn of Big Bang. So you put viruses into the body and the virus goes in and attacks it. Maybe of which virus to choose, etc. They may use at certain genetic patterns, but now I'm stretching my imagination and my ignorance a lot. But I think genomics will do a great job for diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, etc. Limited in AMR.
Good. So the next one is from Veena again. How should the startup retain their name? I mean, I think they make an impact so that they make their presence felt in that market. Yeah, I know. In early stages, it might be really hard to be able to do that. Most often, I hear funding related news, and that's the only key thing which people identify startups with. But what do you think startups should do other than that to actually?
Excellent. No, it's a very good question, and I have some answers to it. Is that the real ability to step out of your scientific comfort factor and get into areas you're not good at, such as networking, writing global grants, creating an advisory body that has some of the eminent people in the world sitting in it, etc. You guys have no idea that to close our funding, we did more than 200 pitches.
Wow.
Okay? Everywhere, every cafe coffee day those days, to Starbucks, to whatever, going around with a begging bowl, and then making your mission vision so crisp that you don't even need a PowerPoint. By the way, I do most of my pitches without a PowerPoint. It needs to come from your senses, from your nerves, from within you, right? So I think the ability to put a good advisory board that has some iconic names in it, even if they only offer their name, makes a big difference. I have a whiteboard in which we had the 10 largest names in antibiotics, mainly US and UK. We are associated with 8 of those names today.
Nice.
Some are real associations, some are so-so associations, but there is association. Then what happens? You get great value by name association. And then people slowly start taking you a little more seriously, saying that if Miss X associated her name with your company, maybe your company is special. And these need to be iconic global names. Go for it. Shamelessly write emails, LinkedIn, just write to top professors in universities. 95% of them will not respond. But in that 5% who responds is where you create differentiation for yourself. Your differentiation will not come in science. Your differentiation will come in the positioning of your science.
Positioning, yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
I had a few questions.
Sure. Yes, please, Srinath.
Yeah, Anand, thank you so much. This has resonated with me, and I'm the team at iBlot at so many levels, right? Thank you for the great talk. I had a lot of questions, and I'm happy that we have some more time. Right, the first question I had was, so I had the opportunity to work with Pfizer's biosimilars division before they were shut down. Right,
Sure.
so it's very exciting to me and interesting that you mentioned this sort of big pharma companies shutting down and their biosimilar units and R&D units not sustaining in India, right? So I'm trying to understand what are the gaps and opportunities that these big global biotechs have faced in building an R&D team in India, and how those sort of gaps play into your day-to-day in sustaining this sort of a drug discovery team. Right?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. I wish there were more pharmaceutical companies. So when I started Magma in chip design, I could hire people from Intel, from Sony, from Nokia, etc., right? And we all took off each other, etc. Here, there is very little. I don't want to go hire people from the CRO industry because they're good people, but their DNA and thinking is not one of taking risk because, they're doing jobs and they're doing a great job for customers. So I wish we had more. So not having enough pharma companies in India is a big lacune in the Indian pharmaceutical space. And why did that happen? Because they probably found the regulatory environment is too hard in India. It comes down to that. And 2, They must have also felt the same thing I'm espousing you, saying, hey, how am I going to build a 200% awesome oncology drug discovery unit in Siruseri, Chennai? Right? Can I take people from Glenmark, from Dr. Reddy's, from Orchid Pharma? And then when they start talking to such people, they find that they're all good people, talented people, but they may not have the DNA they're looking for or the experience of having. And it's a chicken and egg issue that happened here. Right? It's not fair to come and say, show me 200 people when you have to create those 200 people. AstraZeneca did it. And AstraZeneca has spawned off 20 plus companies, guys, in this country. Gangajan, Bugworks, Biomonitor, Enzene, Chandra's company, so many companies, right? One pharma company did that. So that's part two of your question. Part one is biosimilars is a great opportunity for India because for the audience, Indian entire industry was based on cut and paste so far before. That means somebody made a drug, that drug came off patent. I figured out how to make it better. Better means cheaper, but bioequivalent. Everybody needs it. 30% of the world's generic drugs come from India. Great India. Without us, there could not be cheap drugs. We'd be paying huge money and dying like flies if we were depending on Pfizer and Merck and Roche. So thank our Indian industry. Biosimilars is a different game. There also, you're taking somebody's biologic injection, expensive drug, and you're creating a similar. There is no cut and paste in biology. You can only create similarity. In chemistry, if it's methyl salicylate, you make methyl salicylate. That's identical. In biology, there's no identicality. You say it's similar, it's similarly safe, it's similarly going to do this to your immune function, similarity, right? And the US companies don't like it because they want to keep on milking. This is the opportunity for India. It's a $200 billion opportunity in the next 4 to 5 years to do biosimilars. Is there innovation in biosimilars? Although you're copying somebody's biologic, you bet. It's not easy to create another protein and have it fold and behave a similar way to the original. It's very complex. Chemistry is easy because I hire a bunch of synthetic chemistry, put some hoods, get starting materials from China, you're done. Biosimilars is very tough because you can't have immune reaction, you can't have side effects, etc. So biosimilars is a huge opportunity, Srinath. And out of India's success in biosimilars, a lot of rich companies will then start investing money into novel drug discovery. I don't believe in my lifetime, very quickly, we're going to get $10-20 billion tomorrow or day after tomorrow for companies like Bugworks to happen. We will struggle. And I love that struggle. So I can write a book, which will become a bestseller in those struggles. Right? It's wonderful. Remember, it's great to struggle with no precedence because nobody knows what I do because you just go through. So I think opportunities for youngsters like you and others on the line is, don't think of biosimilars as just a cut and paste. It is next paradigm shift after generics, huge value. And something that costs $10,000 an injection can become $500 an injection. You're going to save your people by doing biosimilars. So it's not bad to do biosimilars, and there's enough manufacturing novelty in it. So I highly do it. No big pharma is going to come and put an operation in India the next 5 years. All of the big action in India are going to happen from Indian companies.
Amazing. I had another question that actually ties well into Veena's question as well, right? So the entire translation you had and the success you had in the semiconductor industry is also largely because the general audience was aware about the industry, right? Different stakeholders will understand it at multiple levels. So how do you go about creating awareness in this AMR society, in the communities that relate to AMR and to the general public in 3 different levels? One, to the science people, right, in terms of publications, etc., to the non-science people in terms of communication, and also to those who are midway there in terms of understanding the business models and science. And how do you go about strategizing this?
I can be very honest, and this ties into the question Yogesh asked. One of the biggest differentiators for Bugworks, because people don't understand science. If I start talking about efflux pump and how we came up with new chemistry and use modeling and simulation, people like Manish and others may understand it, but you lose the rest of the audience, right? Simplify science into solving a large society problem So all stakeholders understand it and also show that there can be a market at the end of it. Simplify, simplify, simplify. So my lack of knowledge and ignorance actually helped us to simplify it without getting too hung up on my science is so great, you're not going to be able to understand. Okay. So I spend more time with non-science audience, Srinath, because AMR is like climate. It's not one disease. It involves manufacturing and not throwing your waste of antibiotics. It involves not using poultry and food chain that has been contaminated with antibiotics. It includes diagnostics, devices, epidemiology. Unbelievable. It's like climate. How do you go talk to someone about carbon fixing? You know, you'll have to start it at a level that your children are going to be breathing toxin. Same thing. So you work with a larger audience and get a larger audience to start understanding it. And by doing so, you become like a messiah. And I don't mind saying that with pride. You become like a messiah. And then your company starts becoming associated with that area. Even though you're struggling and coming up with the science. Because that 10 years is the long time to not do anything and just say, trust my science, it's going to work. So you as a biotech entrepreneur have to become that messiah. She or he has to take the messaging everywhere to common audience. Science audience will not trust you. They're the most skeptical, boring audience. And I'm glad I'm not a scientist. They're too skeptical and just think they know too much. Be very, very brutally honest. They don't know anything except their narrow work. So science audience will not trust you until you publish in high impact journals. Until then, they think they know 100x more than you. Actually, I don't care about that audience. Okay. It's this non-science audience, and the most important audience is policymakers. So I spend most of my time talking to Wellcome Trust, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Carbex, GARDP, Novo Nordisk Foundation, this foundation, that foundation. My job is not chief executive officer. I have enough people to know how to execute. It's chief networking officer, CNO, or chief begging officer. So it's a CBNO, right? You beg and you network. That's the job of the executive, not to say, trust my science. Bugworks does the great science. How can we be the best science when there's only so much that to slice and dice? So become the messiah, work with the common public, and by doing so, that investment will translate into your valuation of your company. And people say, wow, this company must be good. Your science has to be good because bullshit will crumble in 2 days. Science has to be good. Don't let your scientists upfront to be the people who are going out, boom, and making all the talks because they get too egotistic about their science and their understanding of the knowledge that this person is never going to understand. Who cares? So put a team together where at least 1% is dispassionate about the science, but passionate about the mission.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Anand. We're actually at time right now. So before I close the session, I maybe have 1 to 2 questions if you have
Please,
the time.
go for it. Yes, these are great questions. I'm enjoying it. I hope you guys are enjoying it.
Right. So we're definitely going to close off with key takeaways for our audience, the leaders of tomorrow, right? Young graduates, young professionals, early stage entrepreneurs, right? Mid-stage entrepreneurs, even in fact, in the Indian ecosystem, right? So we'll touch upon that in the end. But before that, I was very curious how you're going about your de-risking strategy, right? Because it's such a complex space in terms of the science, in terms of the funding ecosystem, the entire biotech ecosystem you have. So you have to be able to de-risk the science, the tech, and also the logistics, right? If you're bringing in people from the US, Israel, okay, how much are you going to spend on that? And how much are you going to keep for, for the other tasks? So how do you go about this?
Exceptional question. No easy answers. Innately, what we're doing is so highly risky because of one thing, unknown unknowns. Just remember that, guys. When, all I did in semiconductor physics and everything, complicated stuff, you're sending a mask, the mask goes to Taiwan, comes back. It's still bounded by the laws of physics. And the laws of physics are quite unfailing, except for a very rare corner case. Unfortunately, that's all logical science. In biology, it's a very illogical science. Is that very, very hard, the unknown unknowns. For example, we were booming in the last 6 months, all right? Our phase 1 trial in Australia was going amazingly, Srinath, right? We hit all our cohorts and we're like, wow, man, we must be the greatest. Till for 1 or 2 subjects, they had an injection site irritation, just where you put the injection. Boom. You have to go back to the drawing table, fix that formulation problem and come back. How many months? 9 months. Maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million. Do I have guarantee the new formulation work? I don't know until we go in. So there is some innate risk, but you are absolutely right. When you work with your investor partners and you work with your staff, the biggest job that you as your chief executive officer do internally with your management team is de-risking, like you said. Hey, can we have multiple programs? Can we not spend so much money on the second program, but keep going it because the first program may fail? Then the scientists immediately tell me, you think my program is going to fail? I have 25 years experience doing this. That's a tough decision to tell him, my friend, it could fail. In fact, the probability of failure is far, 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 far higher than the probability of success, right? So you do multiple programs without spending too much money. We got into multiple areas, into immuno-oncology and AMR. Immuno-oncology is fiercely competitive, thousands of people working on it, no guarantee. But at least it's an area very close to AMR, we could do it. And the last thing we did to de-risk is, I was laughed at by my colleagues, is AMR is not just about public health. I started studying bioterrorism, and I realized that bioterrorism is about anthrax, bubonic plague, people taking bacteria and weaponizing it. Sounds like a Hollywood movie, but COVID has shown us that anything is possible. I said, what if our assets can also work for biodefense? That opened up a completely new market without us having to create new assets. Laughed at, to where today it's one of the biggest value assets that we're working with 4 governments, United States, UK, Australia, Canada, who are testing our products on the worst bioterrorism. And that market is a government market. So look at potential repurposing of your products, new market. This is how you de-risk. After all this, we could still fail. But that's the unknownness, the innateness of this field.
Thanks for helping us get a glimpse of the unknownness. That is amazing, Anand. Thank you. So I think we'll wrap up with one last question, right? And yes, Dr. Mani's very awesome, candid responses to all the questions. Thank you for that, Anand. So one last question that we have for you is, now we have all these young leaders who we're going to share across platforms, across all our different venues, right? These are young graduates, young students, maybe young professionals, semi-experienced professionals, people in the 30 to 35, 35 to 40, that ideal group that you're targeting as well. What can we do to make this ecosystem better, right? What are the opportunities for us right now? And what is that one takeaway message that you would give us to encourage us to build better?
I think your generation is far superior to mine in terms of risk taking, because you have so many opportunities. If you fail, it's okay. You can go work in whatever, in IT or what have you. We had very little opportunity. So our insecurities prevented us from doing what you're doing. I love it. But where I see this young generation missing, 2 points. One is we don't see enough of youngsters in industry events, able events and other things. It's the same boring oldies talking about the same thing, like we know all the answers. We don't, right? We have a lot of scars, but we don't have all the answers. So we need to see youngsters do what I did when I was in the semiconductor industry. We started India Semiconductor Association, right? We did things, we created that wave. Don't wait for somebody else's wave, because you don't know whether you're going to drown in that wave or be lifted by that wave. So you need to be active and come to these industry body meetings, government forums. So a 35-year-old's voice, her voice or his voice can be heard, and you're noticed and you get picked up by the oldies. And then say, hey, if you start a company, let me know, I may want to invest in you, etc., etc. Today, I don't know the 35-year-olds in India, except the few who work for us, right? So we need to see people more active in that ecosystem. When DBT has meetings to say, we want feedback, again, we hear only, few people showing up, right? We need to see more of that. The last point for youngsters is think orthogonal. Don't think science. Look at large problems and bring in engineering, computing, and science together. This is the new India. Just like 20 years ago, when I moved back, data and voice came together to create a revolution. Now I see information technology, science, the sciences coming together. So if any company I do, I will make sure that there is enough talent pool of guys who know how to do Python programming, to folks who know how to do prototyping of devices, to someone who loves their gene and protein a lot. That is where you're going to show differentiation, easy to write business plans because you get orthogonal skill sets. And the final point is, in your co-founding team, do not have only scientists. You will fail. You are dead on arrival. You have a non-starter. I think scientists have been phenomenally smart, but their phenotype is not the phenotype that can potentially gain funding. So you need to have a networker and a finance person in your founding team. Otherwise, don't do the company.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anand. That was amazing. Thank you for those key takeaways as well. And with that, we'll be closing the event right now. The recording will be available online on our page and on YouTube soon as well. And we'll share that with you, Anand, and the rest of the audience. Right?
Brilliant.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys. Really awesome to see youngsters taking this on. I appreciate it. This is how you create an ecosystem. You answered your own question. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. And you guys can follow us on LinkedIn, Slack if you're not already. We have a community on Slack and about 3,000 people on LinkedIn as well. So you can join us there. And yeah, thank you, Anand. I request you to stay for another 1 or 2 minutes if you have the time to chat with the team. Right. But yes, the event is officially come to an end.